probably rather be outside. I first want to thank the team who put this event together. Ina Fritsch, Ina, Diane Conway, and Lori Alvord, who is back there. Thank you. Oh, and I helped a little too. And my name is Susan Little. Without their invaluable experience, I would not have been able to do any of this, so I'm very grateful for all their help. Not present, but also invaluable, is Gina Lindhorst, who made the speaker placards and some of the signage that you see around here, and then organized our cart so that we got everything from the storage unit to here that we actually needed. Judy DeAngelis is here somewhere. I saw her. Hi, Judy. She made sure our press release was distributed. Suzanne Taylor will serve as our moderator today. Lori and Ina will collect the questions from the audience, and you can just raise your hand if you want a card picked up. And now I would like to introduce our speakers, whose full bios are back there on the table on the right-hand side. Our first speaker is Ben Wilcox. We have a nice picture of him up here, but he's coming to us from Tallahassee this morning. He is the head of Integrity Florida. He's the current research director and co-founder of Integrity Florida, whose mission is to expose government corruption and promote government integrity. Our second speaker is Amy Keith, who is with us in person. She is the current executive director of Common Cause of Florida, which works to strengthen and protect democracy in the Sunshine State. And she has traveled to us from St. Petersburg. Our final speaker is Alan Ross, who is from Brevard. Mr. Ross is the chair of We the People of Brevard, which is a conservative political action committee, and also of South Beach's America First Conservative Coalition. He recently led a coalition to investigate money in politics in Florida state and local elections. Thank you for attending. Please don't hesitate to ask questions, which we'll do at the end. And now I'll turn this over to Suzanne Taylor, who has a few words about the league, and then we'll start the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Also, I thank you for coming out on a Saturday morning. This is kind of off script a little bit, but I've just found out that one of our members was in a bad car accident, so I wanted to let people know Susan Connolly, who hopefully most of us know, she's in Palm Bay, and she's at the Palm Bay City Council meetings all the time, and the county commissioners, and she's always giving us information about what's going on in the county. So if you know Susan, you just keep her in your thoughts. We hear she's, actually I don't know if she's doing well or not. We'll try to find out later today.
She's not doing very well.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I was told after we spoke this morning that she's going to be paralyzed on that.
I'm so sorry. I asked this first. I should have waited till the end, but I had no idea. We're going to try to go see her later today. You can't?
They won't let anybody in. They're probably going to move her too, so.
Then we'll keep in touch with Mr. Ross, because he seems like he has good information, and when we're able to see her. So I apologize for starting on a down note, but I was really sad to hear that she was in an accident. So, okay, let's try to get this back on track. So, my name is Suzanne Taylor. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit with the goals of defending democracy and empowering voters. We do this a bunch of different ways. This is one. In terms of educating, but we do this by helping people get registered to vote and overcoming barriers to registering to vote, which can be a lot of different things. It can be having a disability, not knowing the process, and the process does change pretty frequently in Florida, not having the required ID, and specifically regaining the right to vote for returning citizens who have served their prison term. That's one of the League of Women Voters of Florida's signature issues, and we're always trying to work on that. Once people are registered, then the next step is to get them educated to vote. And by educated, I just mean providing information for people. We don't tell people how to vote. We don't tell them who to vote for or what party to vote for, but we try to provide information for all candidates and both sides of any issue. One major way we do that is that we have a website called vote411.org that if you haven't been to it, you need to check it out before the next election, which you have a little bit of time. But Vote 411, we pose questions to all candidates for any particular seat, and and then we cut and paste their answers verbatim into Vote 411. So, for example, on an environmental issue, you can compare each candidate's answers and get the information that you need to make your decision what's best for you, what you think, who you think you should vote for. We also do candidate forums, which we did 2 this year in the Atlantic and Melbourne Beach, because those were the only 2 elections we could do them for, so we did those and those went really well. And events like this today, we try to do different events like this. Recently we've done National Popular Vote, we've done ranked choice voting, we had an event called Politics, Religion, and Society. So we try to cover lots of different things. Dark money today, and we're going to do one, I hear coming up, someone offered to do a Civics 101, which we've been talking about for a while, that people have been asking us about. So that's what we hope to do. So I am going to turn things over to our panelists. And Mr. Wilcox, you're up first. This is Ben Wilcox with Integrity Florida.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person. I hope you can hear me well. I want to thank the League for inviting us to have this important discussion today. Dark money, may not seem like an important issue when people are struggling to put food on the table and access affordable health care, but the corrupting influence of money in politics does have a direct effect on public policy as it relates to those issues and others. Allow me to briefly summarize my background as it relates to the issue of dark money. This coming legislative session will be the 50th session that I have been involved with in some way, shape, or form. I started my career as a public radio reporter with the Florida Public Radio Network in 1976 and ended up covering the legislature as a journalist for over 20 years. I also spent 20 years lobbying the legislature for good government organizations, including Common Cause and the League of Women Voters. Integrity Florida was founded in January 2012. As Susan said, we are a nonpartisan research institute and government watchdog. Our mission is to promote integrity in government and to expose public corruption. Our vision is government in Florida that is the most open, ethical, responsive, and accountable in the world. To date, Integrity Florida has published more than 25 research reports focusing on various aspects of Florida government. Our reports typically include analysis of campaign financing and lobbying expenditures and how that money influences public policy. Our next research report will be published next year, and it will examine Florida's system of financing political campaigns and focus specifically on the rise of so-called dark money in our elections. One of the conclusions of the report will be that the decades-long attempt at campaign finance reform aimed at reducing the corrupting influence of money in politics has failed, and that we need to go back to the drawing board and take a comprehensive look at how we regulate the financing of campaigns with a focus on transparency. I'm not sure the political will to do that exists in the Florida legislature, but it desperately needs to be done. The original campaign finance reform in Florida was based on transparency, and it can be summed up by the phrase, who gave it, who got it. In 1951, the legislature revised the Florida Election Code and added a requirement that candidates establish campaign accounts and that they file reports listing all contributions received and expenditures made by their campaigns. The legislation was referred to as the who gave it, who got it law. Attempts to regulate money in politics go back to the founding of our country, but the modern day report began in earnest following the Watergate scandal in the 1970s. It was then that the effort to reform our campaign finance system was born, and it was led by organizations like Common Cause and the League of Women Voters. It's also when those organizations and others began pressing for strict limits on campaign contributions and expenditures. Then, in 1976, the Supreme Court got involved. In the landmark decision Buckley versus Vallejo, the court essentially said, you can't limit political expenditures. Then in 2010, in another landmark ruling known as Citizens United, the court essentially said that corporations and unions are people, and they also have free speech rights that can't be limited. So fast forward to Florida in 2025. We have a campaign finance system now that offers an illusion of regulation when in fact it more resembles the unregulated Wild West. We place a $1,000 limit on contribution to legislative and local candidates and $3,000 limit on contributions to statewide candidates. That's an illusion of regulation because any candidate or any person for that matter can set up a political committee and raise and spend unlimited amounts of money. Candidates are incentivized to raise money into a political committee rather than directly into their official campaign account because that's where the big money is, and it's not subject to limits. There are few restrictions on how a political committee can spend this money, and candidates are free to coordinate with the political committee and to direct its spending. You're not supposed to spend on personal expenses, but that's easy to get around by labeling the expenses as consulting or fundraising. Political committees are a main reason for the rise of dark money in Florida's campaign finance system. Dark money is essentially money where the source is untraceable. Remember that fundamental campaign finance reform? Who gave it? Who got it? Dark money is money that gets passed through a nonprofit into a federal super PAC, into one state political committee, and then to another state political committee. The original source of the money becomes completely untraceable. That's the reason it's called dark money. So what can we do to restore the original purpose of campaign finance reform? Transparency. Our upcoming research report will lay out some policy options for the legislature to consider if it does have some political will to address the dark money issue. One policy option would be to prohibit transfers of money between political committees. Basically, we would be saying, you raise it, you spend it. Very similar to the phrase, you gave it, you got it. And there will be another policy option, which will be controversial. We will propose doing away with the current limits on contributions directly to a candidate's campaign account. Along with that, we will propose prohibiting candidates from setting up political committees or coordinating with political committees. All contributions and expenditures to a campaign would be reported by the candidate as is currently required by law. It may not eliminate the use of political committees by candidates, but it would take away the incentive to use those committees to avoid the limits. Both of those policy options might be challenged in court as violations of free speech, and it would be interesting to see how the courts rule. I do think a return to transparency in campaign financing is sorely needed in this state. Our research report will be focused on Florida, but there are other reforms that probably need to take place at the federal level. A report by the Brennan Center this year found that in the 2024 election cycle, dark money groups, nonprofits, and shell companies that spend on elections without revealing their donors spent more than $1.9 billion in last year's election cycle, a dramatic increase from the prior record of $1 billion in 2020. Federal dark money reforms could include stricter disclosure requirements for charitable 501c4s and C6s that participate in funding elections. We also need to strengthen the Federal Elections Commission, which is notoriously dysfunctional and ineffective in enforcing campaign finance laws. I'll conclude my presentation by just saying my thinking on the financing of campaigns has evolved over the years. Given what the courts have told us we can and can't do in regulating campaign financing, I now embrace the NASCAR theory. Candidates, like NASCAR racing cars, should clearly display their sponsors so that we, as voters, can see who is funding these candidates and vote accordingly. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this discussion, and And I look forward to hearing from Amy and Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Thank you, audience, for reminding me to give him that time. Now we have Amy Keith, who is with Common Cause of Florida.
Good morning. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters Space Coast for having this panel and for inviting me to be on it. Getting to talk next to Ben is always a bit flattering. I am much newer to the Florida political scene and this work. I come out of a human rights and refugee rights background into voting rights here in the United States, and that's where my expertise lies. But I have learned a lot from Ben, who was a former executive director of Common Cause himself. So thank you, Ben, for that. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for being here on a beautiful Saturday. Common Cause is a national grassroots organization that is dedicated to upholding the core values of American democracy. We work as what I would say is a kind of broad-based democracy organization. So we are most known in Florida here for our voting and fair representation work. We co-lead the nonpartisan Florida Election Protection Coalition, which helps ensure that all voters can cast their ballot and have it count. But we do also work on anti-corruption and accountability. That is really where our legacy in Florida started. We've been in Florida since 1973, and we helped pass the Sunshine Amendment, which helped provide that transparency through our actually first citizens amendment that ever got approved for the Florida Constitution under our 1968 Constitution back in the late 70s. So we have a strong legacy with money in politics and transparency. We also work, just for your information, on media and technology and the increasing impact that it's having on our democracy. And we work on civil rights and civil liberties, ensuring that we have the ability to dissent in our democracy and that we are protecting those basic rights which help a democracy function. Now, what I wanted to talk about a little bit today was kind of break things down for folks who are not familiar with dark money and to talk a little bit more about Citizens United and what you heard Ben mention about how this money kind of moves around, and also orient people who may be newer to this topic to some of the key definitions and names of things and what they are, so that as you're reading media about this, you can be a better informed voter. So as you know, Ben mentioned, and I'm sure if you're here today, you know, since the 2010 Citizens United ruling, all right, I hope you're all gonna forgive me having a phone with me, all right? This is a lot of detail, so I wanna get it right for you. So since the 2010 Citizens United ruling, we have seen, as you know, a drastic increase in spending by billionaires, corporations, and other ultra-wealthy actors to influence our elections and ultimately to influence our politics. America did fight to reduce the influence of wealth on our politics throughout the 1800s and 1900s, but unfortunately now we are seeing things roll back. There are actually an array of different court rulings and regulations that have come together to produce the situation that we are currently in. You heard Ben mention some of them. I kind of wanted to dig in a little bit on that. So Citizens United, which is kind of the headline one that we always hear about. Now that did say that corporate spending on elections, and that, basically is spending to, tell the public vote for or against a specific candidate, that is speech. And under the First Amendment, it can't be limited as long as it is not coordinated with candidates or parties. So you can see the Supreme Court had a little bit of an assumption of independence there. Now, other rulings, regulations, and honestly, legal loopholes have also undermined, the spending transparency, as you heard Ben discuss, and also, just basically enabled the sources of money to get hidden, so we don't really know where it's coming from. And then we also have a problem of really weak regulations or weak enforcement of regulations, which means that spending that is supposed to be independent or supposed to be transparent is actually being done in tandem with campaigns or is being hidden. So the result is that we've got this unlimited amount of money pouring into our politics from unknown sources, which is influencing our elected officials and the policies they pass, and it is also drowning out the voices of voters, and it is making it harder for grassroots candidates who are really connected to their communities to run for office and really compete. So a couple basic concepts. So we've got, first off, hard money. Now you might see when you see reporting on this as hard money. Now that is a donation to a candidate or a political party, right? Those donations are highly regulated, as you heard Ben mention, right? Like $1,000. They're highly regulated and they're subject to those contribution limits, and the donors do have to be disclosed. So that is hard money, right? Hard money, that's not dark money, right? That's the stuff that is there. It's regulated, it's transparent. Now then we have something called independent expenditures. You will hear that a lot when you start looking into campaign finance information. So that is spending which is kind of directed at the voting public, to try to tell them to vote for or against a specific candidate. And now, under our current, laws, and as they are in 2025, individuals, corporations, unions, and other groups can currently make these expenditures without any limits. Now, this funding can buy advertisements, it can pay for phone banking, it can pay for door-to-door canvassing, but what makes them supposedly independent is that they're not supposed to be coordinated with the political parties or the candidates, right? So all of these expenditures are supposed to be reported to the Federal Elections Commission, regardless of which group is doing the spending. But, there's all these weird rules, like if you're outside of the 30 days before a primary or the 60 days before a general and the ad doesn't say an explicit phrase like vote for or vote against, then it might not actually have to be disclosed to the Federal Elections Commission. So there's a lot of this kind of gray area rules that you do see. And again, because it's supposed to be independent, right, which was part of the basis of that Citizens United ruling, then it's unlimited how much money you can spend on these things. All right, so if people know one thing about Citizens United, I'm sure I could ask you all, if you know one thing about Citizens United, you probably know that it has increased dark money and basically ushered in a tidal wave of dark money into our elections. As Ben has already mentioned, dark money basically refers to any kind of expenditures and independent expenditures especially, where the donors are not disclosed. So we don't know, is the money coming from a billionaire? Is it coming from a corporation that has business before the government? Is it coming from a foreign entity? Or, any and all of the above? We don't know, and the voters don't know. And so we don't know what interests are really, and influence, to be honest, is behind that. And that's why we call it dark. So how dark money works is actually kind of complicated. Basically, I would say it comes from the relationship between different types of organizations. So you have certain types of nonprofits, you heard Ben mention them, 501c4s and 501c6s as well. And they can accept donations. Those donations are not tax deductible. If you've ever given to a 501c4, you know it's not tax deductible. But they don't have to disclose who their donors are. And they are allowed to engage in a certain amount of political activity. Now, Citizens United, of course, applied to nonprofits because they are also corporations. And it basically said that their political spending can, in fact, include, that kind of independent expenditure, which is saying, vote for or vote against somebody, explicitly. And of course, they can do all of that without disclosing their donors. And again, it is supposed to be independent. They're not supposed to be coordinating with a candidate or a party. And they do have to report some of that spending to the FEC, to the Federal Elections Commission, but like we talked about, there's lots of little loopholes and gray areas about what they actually have to report, and there's lots of types of spending they don't have to report. Now, one of the weird issues with this is that a 501c4 it's a social welfare organization, so it's not supposed to be doing only political activity, right? That has some limits on what, under the IRS about what political activity it can do. It can't spend its entire overall budget on political activity, and thus enter our favorite friends, independent expenditure committees, also more commonly known as a super PAC. Has everyone heard of a super PAC? Here we go. Okay, so super PACs they were not created by Citizens United. Super PACs were created by a federal lower court ruling, which was also in 2010. And that was the Speech Now versus FEC ruling. And that ruling actually used the same logic as Citizens United, so really based on that logic from Citizens United to say that groups could receive unlimited contributions from individuals and corporations as long as the group itself doesn't give directly to candidates. So if you're following, and you might not be, I get it, this is very, very complicated, and I should draw a chart. But okay, so super PACs only do quote unquote independent expenditures. So they can't give directly to candidates. So that means they can raise an unlimited amount of money from corporations, nonprofits, unions, and individuals. And that means they are a way for wealthy individuals and corporations to pour as much money as they would like to support or oppose candidates supposedly independently. Now, here we go. Super PACs do have to disclose their donors, right? So you can see who donated to a super PAC, but if the donor to that super PAC happens to be a 501c4, what did we learn about 501c4s? They don't have to disclose who their donors are. So they give money to the super PAC, but you don't know where that money came from. Also, say the donor to that super PAC is a shadowy little LLC shell company. You don't know really where that money came from either. So overall, that's not that helpful with respect to transparency in our elections, right? The super PAC has to disclose its donors, but you don't have to go all the way back to know where it's from. And to close the loop, those 501c4 organizations, they don't actually have to report how much money they give to a super PAC. And, as Ben also mentioned, you've got the 501c4s and the PACs and the super PACs, they actually pass money around between each other so that, it becomes almost impossible to follow the flow of funding or to even know where the original source of the money is from, which of course makes it very hard to track and very easy to hide and manipulate and abuse. So, not surprisingly, since Citizens United and since Speech Now, we have seen just an explosion in the number of groups that are applying for 501c4 status and an explosion in the amount they spend on political activity. And in Florida, we have also seen a massive increase in kind of shadowy LLCs who also can funnel money into political committees. So there are, I would say that the other thing, so in addition to, we've got this thing with how much money people can give, we also have this issue with independence, right? So, super PACs are supposed to be independent. That's part of the Supreme Court's basis for Citizens United was saying, well, these are independent. That's why it's that person's freedom of speech to independently say, what they want to say. But we've even seen, and I'm sure you've noticed this, that we've got these super PACs, which are single candidate super PACs. So you've got the PAC, and it's run by an individual who is very, very close or personally connected to the candidates itself. And all of this raises absolutely major questions about how independent any of these expenditures actually are. And so that is another big piece in our money and politics puzzle, is the rules around independence and non-coordination, and also the very, very weak enforcement of those rules that we see. So we got a fourfold problem: the amount of money you can donate, who can donate that money without being, without limits and without disclosing who they are, the fact that we don't know where any of that money is coming from, the fact that the money is not truly independent from the campaign. So this is all coming together. And all in all, we know that over the past 15 years, this means that we have seen really fundamental changes in the way that our elections are financed and the amount of money spent in them. Ben gave us some of the numbers, but so there's open secrets. So let's see, the total independent expenditures in 2008, right, was $574 million. In 2012, so 2 years after Citizens United, independent expenditures doubled to almost $1.3 billion. In 2020, they reached $3.3 billion, and in 2024, close to $4.5 billion. So what we've seen from 2028, where we had around $500 million, 2008 rather, we had about $500 million, and now we've got about $4.5 billion. Now, a lot of that is dark money. That means we don't know where a lot of that $4.5 billion is coming from, who is paying to influence those candidates and to influence the policies that they pass. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, as you heard Ben say, we had, 1.9 million, I think you said, Ben, in 2024 in dark money. And in 2006, we still had dark money problems back then, but it was 5 million in 2006, 5 million in dark money. And now we are well over $1 billion and approaching $2 billion in dark money in our elections, money that we do not know who gave it and why. So a lot more money in our politics, we know that this has a huge issue on like voters they don't know who they're voting for, they don't know what their interests are. We also know that this means that candidates running for office, now they have to appeal to this, if they're gonna win, if they're gonna compete, they've gotta find sources of very big money, right? So they have this vested interest. And that means that the people giving the money have a lot of influence over our donors, and so when we see things like people can't afford food, then we have to ask, well, what policy, who's influencing those policy decisions? Are they listening to their constituents, or are they listening to the people who, have helped to give these enormous amounts of money in campaigns? Now, obviously, I'm talking to a room of the League of Women Voters. We all know that is a core problem. But I want to give you a couple other numbers because I think this does really influence this, or helps illustrate it. So let's see. When we talk about individual donors, right? So say we're not talking about corporations in this case. Let's just talk about billionaires. Okay, so in 2008, the top 100 individuals contributed 1.5% of spending in federal elections. Now it's 15% that comes from individual rich people. In 2010, this is wild, the biggest individual donor in 2010 was a couple, Robert and Jolene Perry. They gave $7.6 million. That was the biggest individual donor in 2010. Does anyone know who the biggest individual donor was in 2024? Yes. Does anyone know how much he gave? $280 million. Now that's the top donor. So we went from the top individual donor giving $7.6 million to the top individual donor giving $280 million in 15 years, less than 15 years. Oh, and by the way, the top 10 donors in 2024 all gave over $40 million. And I think I actually read something, don't quote me on this one, but I actually think I read that the only person who's still in that list of top 10 over that 15 years is Michael Bloomberg. Like that's how, it's insane. All right, so the last thing I want to say is that I think that one of the things that gets talked about a little bit less with campaign finance, like we talk about the corruption, we talk about this, but I just also want to mention that this also affects our choices on the ballot because it makes it a lot harder for a candidate who actually understands the challenges that a normal American is going through to make ends meet. It makes it a lot harder for that candidate to actually compete and win. Like this is not just corrupting elected officials, right? It's not just drowning out the voices of voters. It's also giving us fewer choices for who our leaders can be on the ballot because you have to be able and willing, to go down that road to get this money to compete in these elections. And that's really sad for us as far as legislatures and representatives who really represent us, look like us, and face the challenges that we face and are going to pass policies that address those challenges. I'm sure I am way over time because I know I am a massive talker, but I did want to talk about a little bit of some positive things because this is all very dark. So let's talk about, it's not all bad. Ben has some amazing policy solutions that he proposed. So one thing I like to think about with all of this is, yes, money is powerful. We'd be silly to think money isn't powerful, and money, can do a lot. But money doesn't cast a ballot. All right, so the people do have the power to defeat money in politics. Money, as of yet, does not cast a ballot. So here's some of the things we can do and are doing. So first off, there are court cases to improve independence. Common Cause, Georgia sued the FEC for failing to enforce independent spending in the 2021 Georgia Senate runoff, and that resulted in a settlement, which was a win for voters. And very recently, just in September, Common Cause, the League of Women Voters, and Campaign Legal Center, shout out to the Campaign Legal Center, by the way, if you want to do a deep dive on dark money, we love them. So the three organizations actually submitted an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, urging the justices to uphold the spending limits on how much parties can spend in coordination with federal candidates. So we do have the ability to go to court to enforce limits, to enforce independence. There's also the Federal Disclose Act, which is focused on increasing transparency at the federal level. That has been introduced every year in Congress since 2010. That is something that we can support and we can push for our congressional representatives to actually put in place at the federal level higher transparency so that at least we know where the money is coming from. And one of my favorite things, public campaign financing. So we talk about balancing the scales with big money, right? We gotta reduce the amount of money, we gotta know where it's coming from. But on the other side, we do wanna support the voice of voters and the ability for grassroots candidates to win. And one of the best ways to do that other side of the equation is public campaign financing. And thank you, people of Florida, because we defended our state's public campaign financing program when we refused to vote for Amendment 6 on the ballot in 2024. So a little clap for ourselves. Come on. Come on. That's right. We defended one of the best solutions to money in politics last year here in the state of Florida. We were one of the first states to put in place a public campaign financing program, and we have consistently defended it. Those programs are really great because what they do is if somebody gives a small dollar donation to a candidate, then it's matched with public funds. So it makes those small dollar donations way more valuable to the candidate. It also helps to provide real seed money for a campaign for candidates who are grassroots and coming from a grassroots base. These are not the solution to all the problems, but they are effective at really helping us have more choices on the ballot and really encouraging politicians to take the voices of their constituents more seriously by backing it also with that financial incentive. We do have we have a public campaign financing program for statewide candidates in Florida. They have been used by both sides of the aisle. Ron DeSantis, famously not a wealthy individual when he ran for governor, and he has relied on our campaign financing program to help with his campaigns for governor. And because this is nonpartisan, I'm going to talk about both sides of the aisle using public campaign financing. We had an amazing experience of public campaign financing earlier this week because actually Zoran Mamdani, certainly was using New York City's public campaign financing program. And as we know, there was a lot of big money that was put out, against that campaign. But there was about 7,000 New Yorkers who gave small dollar donations to that campaign, and through public campaign financing, that actually was equal to around $3 million in funding for the campaign. So that you really see that it amplifies those small dollar donations and helps candidates, who aren't wealthy to be able to run for office and win. And again, that's on both sides of the aisle. So, last thing I want to talk about, and I know I've been going on forever, so just give me one more second. In 2017, we can get creative locally, and I know Alan's going to talk more about how we can get creative locally, but in 2017, my city, I'm a little proud of this, St. Petersburg actually passed an ordinance to get rid of super PACs in our city elections. It put a $5,000 limit. It also required transparency and disclosure of foreign ownership of any corporation or entity that was donating in our elections. It was a landmark ordinance for a city to say we're kicking dark money out of our city elections. We passed it in 2017. Cities and states are truly meant to be the laboratories of democracy where we can experiment with solutions. Unfortunately, the Florida State Legislature preempted that law in 2020 and said that cities and counties are actually not allowed to adopt any limitation or restriction on contributions or expenditures. But that is a preemption that is just legislation. We can actually demand as the people of Florida to remove that preemption, just like we could demand to remove the preemption on ranked choice voting, if you recently did an event on that. And that would really enable our cities and counties to be the laboratories to really figure out the most effective ways to get dark money out of our elections. So I said it before and I said it again, money can buy ads and money can float the zone, but money can't cast a ballot. We can cast ballots, we can hold our elected officials accountable for making these changes. And with that, I am going to stop gabbing and hand it on back to Suzanne.
And our last but not least, of course, panelist for today is Alan Ross, who is the chair of We the People of Brevard. Mr. Ross?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here today because this is one issue that is important on both sides of the aisle. Okay? I don't know how much you've all studied Citizens United, but Citizens United was passed by a conservative court, right? Clearly conservative court. And as a conservative, a die-hard conservative, I think it was one of the most horrible things that ever happened to our country. And I believe it today. So why am I involved in campaign finance reform? It's a very simple question, okay? I'm involved because I've seen the horrors of what these two people have talked about. The good news in this fight is it's our fight. It's the left's fight, it's the right's fight against the money. It's we the people against we the money.
Mm-hmm.
So let me tell you my journey into this. So I'm a member of the Brevard Republican Executive Committee, and last year before the Republican primaries in August, mailers were sent out to our county and 6 other counties, 7 counties. And those mailers were at best a mistake, at worst complete corruption and fraud. So what those mailers did, and I'm just kind of give you the picture of this. It had a picture of Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump on the front, okay? And it was basically a guide. It was a suggested voter guide. And what they did is they listed all these people in a suggested voter guide. And the interesting part about the guide was, you looked on the back who sponsored it, okay? People know what high propensity voters are. Okay, those are people that get out and vote every time, right? So what they did is they sent these out to high propensity Republican voters, okay? And they also had the marks, call it the trademarks, if you will, of the RPOF, which is the Republican Party of Florida. And they had the trademark of the Brevard Republican Executive Committee, which is essentially the Republican Party in Brevard. Neither one of those 2 organizations had anything to do with that mailer. It was corrupt and deceiving. So our chair at the time basically commissioned the committee, which I led. And we looked into it. So this is how we got involved in this story. And I've got the receipts. I hope, if I can tell you one thing, I know I'm a conservative, and I know I'm in the minority in this group, but I would beg you to go in and look at our 45-page report on this, because it outlines the corruption and what needs to be done. And it's on our side of the football, okay? So I'm fighting our side. I'm fighting against Republicans, but I can tell you the issue exists on the other side. I'm sure Ben would tell you the same thing. So we started to dig in, and we started to say, who is this PC called Make America Great Again, PAC? So we started doing what most people do, you follow the money. So the best way I can describe this is this political committee raised about $700,000, and it spent about $700,000. But what we saw was sickening and disgusting. So we looked into it, and lo and behold, where did this PAC get all its money from? From 5 other political committees. Virtually no, in less than probably 1/4% came from any kind of individual contribution. It came from other political committees. So then we say, wow, this is amazing. It's all in my report. You can see how it's all broken out. So then we say, well, let's see where these 5 political committees who donated, where did they get their money from? By the time we were done, and we had only gone down 2 levels, though that committee got money from 65 political committees. So go ask yourself, you heard Ben talk about it, you heard Amy talk about it. Is this coordinated? So the issue for us was, should we hold them accountable? We saw a much bigger issue, which was, what happened? How did we get to this? And I had never studied. And being a political activist, I had never really studied this before. So what we found out was, we went back and we learned about Citizens United, and we all kind of threw up. And then we watched what happened, in Florida. Okay? I don't know if you know about this, but in 2013, Florida House Bill 569 removed the 500 contribution limit for political committees and made it unlimited. Kind of like right after Citizens United. In my view, from what I've seen, that's when the gates of hell were opened in Florida. So you live in Brevard. I'm going to try to make this more real for you. So how many people know that all of our electric bills are going up here in Brevard County? Okay. Now I want to try to outline this as easy as I can. So in Florida, we have regulated monopolies, right? The electric company, you have the 2 big ones, Duke and Florida Power and Light, right? Now, what does a monopoly usually have? They own the business, right? They own the business. They own the business in Brevard County. So why in God's name are they giving unlimited amounts of money to politicians? Think about that. Why? They got the business. The reason they're doing it is to get the highest possible return. So there's a grassroots effort on both sides. We're in the 8th inning now. Probably not going to make much of a difference, but that has to stop. There's one right there. I hope Ben takes that one up because it's got to stop. But the real problem is the people are sleeping. The people on the left are sleeping. The people on the right are sleeping. You have to get involved. You have to get involved. So what we found, we went through this, and what we found was we had to do something about it. So we just dug deeper and deeper and deeper, and the 45-page report kind of shows this. So most of you who live in Brevard, I'll give you another kind of good example. So you guys know we had, after the past elections, some people left our county to go somewhere else, and we had an open Senate seat, right? Which Debbie Mayfield won. So in that race, there were 4 people running on the Republican side. And there were some new good blood candidates, okay? And then all of a sudden, while we were doing all of this stuff, I start getting mailer after mailer after mailer, day after day, from someone supporting Debbie Mayfield. Debbie Mayfield is tied in with the big money. She's we the money, okay? I'm telling you this as a conservative. Yeah. So we looked at the Senate, we looked at the mailers and where they come from. It came basically from the Senate campaign committee. They have millions and millions of dollars. And what they were doing day after day, the money had made their choice. So we went in and looked at the Senate campaign PC. And we did the same kind of thing. We got down to 2 levels, and it was like 200 packs had given to that pack. We've got the receipts. So when I've gone out, usually my presentations take 2 hours. I basically show people, and they get sick. And then I basically have a resolution. So what conservatives did in this county, in the Brevard Republican Executive Committee, we passed a resolution that basically said a couple of things. That we want to restore the PAC cap. Now we know that means we've got to fight Citizens United. The other thing we have to do is we have to stop the money going from one PAC to another. We call it PAC transfers. That's really what dark money is. Because 5 of us worked months on this. So, and we kind of pulled it apart pretty well. But if you're a voter and you've got a family and you're at home, or you're retired and you want to enjoy your life, you don't have the time to go out and research this. So we did the work for you. And I can tell you it's going on our side, and I can tell you what's going on the left side. So we're in this game together. There was a Pew study done in 2023 that asked conservatives, Republicans, and Democrats what they thought about this. And you know the people, what they wanted? 70-some-odd% basically said they want to get rid of Citizens United, right? So if we really want it, I'm going to say something as a conservative. Donald Trump has basically said he wants to restore power to the people. If he means that, this has to change. We have to, together, both sides, work on this to stop this. Because what's happening in Brevard County, what those mailers did, and all that money didn't come from Brevard County, and those mailers came in at the end of the race. So you had good, and I'm sure it's the same thing on the left, you had good grassroots candidates who wanted to do the people's work, who got blown up at the last minute. It was disgusting. To fight it, years. So we decided what we had to do was go out. So what I'm doing is I'm going around Florida, and I'm telling this story. I've got a target on my back from the RPOF, I'm sure, because they do not like what we're doing. But this county took a stand. Elected officials of the Republican Party here took a stand, and they said enough is enough. So, and I believe in my heart of hearts, I don't know if you follow politics in Brevard County, but our chair, who commissioned that study, they just removed him. Okay? So, think about that. We're going after the heart of the beast, which is the money. So, I hope Ben, I hope he's still listening, goes to my website and takes my report, because I've got the receipts, okay? And you can do this over and over again. And another story about the mailers, they were sent out to 6 or 7 counties, 7 counties in total, Brevard was one. Do you really do your research? How many of you guys here are sick and tired of unfettered growth that's increasing our tax base? Anybody in here upset with that? Okay, so our work kind of indicates it's where the next phase of massive development will be. The developers own Florida. Let's call it, think about it. You had Mike Haradopoulos, I like Mike, okay? First thing he does is when he hears about what happened in New York, oh, we're open for business in Florida. But you know something? More businesses come in. What are they doing to locals? You get all that kind of development coming in here, people who've lived here for years aren't going to be able to afford homes, right? Businesses are getting tax breaks, okay? And we have so many unfunded, underfunded infrastructure. They're doing all this development, but we're not thinking forward. There's no impact fees, right? We've gone before the county commission, okay? We've had it legislative day. We've told our legislators, but you know something? They could give 2 shits. I'm sorry for the French, because we don't control them. The money controls them. So we all have to wake up, and we have to work on this on both sides of the aisle. So I'm here. I'll take as many things, and a couple of things I had on citizens. So what are we doing? Okay. First thing we're doing is we're trying to do something about Citizens United. That's the toughest one. And so we were thinking about really taking it to them and put it on the ballot, because we can't get support in Tallahassee to put this on. I mean, we have, on the conservative side, we have supermajorities in both houses. They don't want to hear about this. I'm just telling you, they don't want to hear about us. So we've been thinking about, what about a ballot initiative? How many of you know what they've done in Florida for citizens' ballot initiatives, right? It costs 3 to 4 times as much money, right? So what would have been $1.5 million if we could go out, people like me got behind this, we have to raise $1.5 million. Now we got to raise $6 or $7 million. So you got to think, we're losing our home rule here. Everybody has to wake up on both sides. They're taking it away. Money's going to make all the decisions. So I hope you take this serious, but there is some good news in this story. Some of us are waking up. We're doing our best. So the good news is the Republican Liberty Caucus, or the Republican, they're actually proposing legislation to eliminate PC transfers. That is a good first step. That essentially gets rid of the dark money, because now they're forced, they can't pass it back and forth. They can't have 200 packs, one pack given to the other, and then people have no idea where the money's coming from. You don't know if it's coming from in your county, you don't know if it's coming from somewhere in the state, you don't know if it's coming from somewhere else in America or from international companies. You have no God-given idea where it's coming from. So we have to fight, we have to fight this. So support that initiative. So, but they're having trouble finding sponsors. So I would encourage you who work the left side, find sponsors to eliminate. The people want it on both sides. They really, really do. I'm going to ask you, if you're willing, to take a look at this resolution. This is essentially the same resolution we passed at the Brevard Republican Executive Committee. I'm asking you, if you believe in this cause, to sign it. Read it. I'll be here. I'll stay as long as you want. It's pretty simple to understand. It basically says we want to go back to a cap. We want to eliminate PC transfers, and we're asking you to sign it. Okay? Because when I go around Florida, I like to take all of these and let people know there is some good news. The other thing I'm asking you to do is there's 2 signatures on the bottom. If you're willing to put your signature on the bottom, I won't ever pester you unless we actually are moving forward. We're trying to do a citizens ballot initiative. So this way, I have interested people who are interested in the fight to get on board, and you'll get a call from me or people like me working in other parts of the state who are trying to make a difference on this issue. And Ben, I really hope you look at my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next portion of our program is for you all to propose some questions. We have a couple already. I wrote down 5 or 6 while these people were talking, because that brought up a lot of issues.
I just want to make sure, Ben, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Wonderful,
All right.
good call there. So feel free to write your questions down on the cards, just kind of hold them up a little bit, and one of these ladies with a purple t-shirt is gonna come by and bring them up here. So let me get started. The first question that we have, and what we do normally in forums is we change who answers the question first to try to be fair to everybody. Everyone gets first dibs and everyone gets last dibs on different questions. So Ms. Keith, I'm gonna start with you. Who is the federal shutdown benefiting? Yes.
Who is the federal shutdown benefiting? I feel like this is it's not benefiting I think that, wow.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ross?
Yeah.
I can tell you who it's not benefiting.
We can tell you who it's
It's
not.
not benefiting the people.
No.
We know that.
We know it's not benefiting the people. We also know that this, I think that it's really interesting, because Ben mentioned this earlier, where, why talk about dark money when it's hard for people to afford food, right? And we know that this is actually happening with the shutdown. It's hard for people to afford healthcare. And when you look, now, if we had representatives who were actually representing the people, like, would we be paying more money in, corporate subsidies and tax breaks for the ultra wealthy than we're willing to pay to support our neighbors and our fellow people? Now, that is a discussion that you could have about what your politics is and what you believe. But again, if people, whatever you feel about whatever side of the aisle you're on, the fact that we spend more of our money benefiting the ultra wealthy, you gotta wonder how the dark money is influencing the decisions to benefit the ultra wealthy over the everyday people. And so I think that it is not benefiting the people, and a lot of the policies that have brought this about are in fact benefiting the ultra wealthy in our country and corporations.
Mr. Ross, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Mr. Wilcox, do you have anything to add to that question? Who is the federal shutdown benefiting?
I did want to mention to Alan the idea of prohibiting transfers between political committees. We put that out as a policy option in our last research report, which was focused on the use of ghost candidates in the 2020 election. We put out that research report in December of 2022, and in the 2023 legislative session, 2 Republican legislators actually filed a bill to do that, to prohibit transfers between political committees. It was Senator Blaze Goglia and Representative Mike Beltran. The bills never even got a hearing in a committee, but there has been actual legislation filed to do what you're talking about.
I know that, Ben, but I think the people have to be educated. I mean, I get out and talk to people in my precinct, and I'm traveling around the bottom all the time. The people have no idea what's going on. I think a good part of a meeting like this is educating the people, because you should be demanding that starts. If you saw what goes on in my reports, you know you've lost it. Grassroots candidates do not have it. I'm not saying they can't ever win, but they don't have really a fair shot. It has to change. And the simple thing is to do, the Supreme Court said there shouldn't be coordination. You read our report. If you don't come to the conclusion that it's highly coordinated, then you didn't read it right.
Mr. Wilcox, anything else? Okay, I think we're done with that question. So the next one will go to Mr. Ross first, so I saved this one because somebody asked, you mentioned a bill for eliminating PC transfers, and someone asked for the bill number for that, if you have it.
The Republican Liberty Caucus is filing that. They're in the process of looking for sponsors now. At their event a month ago, I was told I did not attend that one, but Myron Donalds, who was running, was actually going to get behind that one. Now, I was not there, but that's what I was told. So that would be an amazing first step for our state to stop it, to stop that, and you'd have at least some semblance of transparency.
Do you know who has introduced it, or who is behind it?
I would say if people are more interested, they should call Bob White, who is now the president of the Florida Republican Liberty Caucus.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wilcox, do you have anything you want to add to that? Anything about the bill pending?
Well, I can give you the bill numbers from the 2023 legislative session. The Senate Bill
There's nothing to file.
1216,
There's no sponsors.
House Bill 1187, I believe.
But on my website,
Those bills haven't been filed since.
on my website, there is a,
They never even got a committee hearing in 2023, but I agree with you, Alan, that that is something that really needs to happen.
right, so if you go to my website, it's my understanding that they're gonna share some information. You go to the political committee section in that website, there is, I believe, outline those bills that they're trying to get a sponsor for. So that's where your voice can make a difference. You just keep pounding, keep making the phone calls. That's what we're encouraging people to do.
To try and get a sponsor in.
Yes, because what happens is, I don't know how you guys know how Tallahassee works. It's a horror show. Okay, the legislative agenda starts with the governor's office, right? He's the chief executive of the state. And then much of it is controlled by Ben Alberton, who's the president of the Senate, and Danny Perez, who is the speaker of the House. And they rule with iron fists on that agenda. So if you're not screaming and yelling and you don't have people getting in front of TV cameras or talking to people, the people just don't have a voice. We have to find a way to get a voice.
Because they control the money. That's
They
why
control-
they
it's all about
have an
that money.
iron fist.
Thank you, Richard.
I just want to say, there are creative ways to help that voice happen. There is an incredible amount of control over the agenda, but, so obviously a bill has to get a sponsor before it can be filed, and then it'll have a bill number, and then, as Ben said, does it even get a committee hearing?
Right, so
But-
they can, and there's
And then
multiple
there's a
committees.
bill, there's thousands of bills, but they don't get heard, and then if it gets a committee hearing, it's gotta go through all its committees, and if you see it have a lot of committees, that's because they're trying to slow it down, because they don't want it to go through all the committees. And then, whether it goes to the floor. So there is really that process of having to push it every single step along the way, getting the sponsor, getting into drafting right now. I think drafting is taking longer than usual. So there is a lot of steps to getting that, bill to become a law. But I just actually want to highlight, there is the, one of the bills that we work on is the Harry T. and Harriet B. Moore Florida Voting Rights Act, which I definitely recommend people look up. To improve voting access across the state. But that bill, what we, that we were able to get a committee hearing by filing it as an amendment and really being able to then make it publicly heard and ensure that it's in the record and talked about, it gets presented in front of a committee, and the people get to know more about it. So I think that there are strategies, there are ways that we can help make our voices be heard on bills that are important to the people, even amidst the control and the power grabbing that we see.
You're all on most of you probably have social media accounts, right? So take a copy of, that bill on PC transfers, throw it out there. You're gonna get applause from both sides. You don't have to worry about it because, you just have to educate the people. So you do, if the left does it, the right does it, maybe we get a shot.
That dovetails into the next question that was provided to me, and that is, I guess we start with Mr. Wilcox. Is either major national political party fighting dark money?
You know, not, I wouldn't say they are real, either one of them are really serious about it, because, you know, that's the system, that's how they,
That's how they lose their power.
the people who are in office, that's how they got there. And, so there's kind of there's always a reluctance to, you know, to mess with the system that got you there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there are things that have been filed, and it's worth looking up. So I would say that probably neither party really has an incentive to do it. I do think we've seen more, steps towards it from the Democrats, but don't quote me on that. But I do believe that's where we've seen, bills filed on it.
Mr. Ross? You want to add? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, it's an interesting question. So I guess it starts with you, Ms. Key. Can these PACs take crypto? How is this non-traceable currency impacting our elections? That's a whole can of worms, huh?
Whoa.
Look, like yeah, I'm sure they can take crypto. I haven't actually personally done a deep dive into like what they can take, but they can take all kinds of donations, and crypto is super, like, I mean, anybody who tells you that they understand fully how cryptocurrency works is probably lying. You know, that's the thing, is that, and the value of cryptocurrency, of course, going up and down, whether or not they would want it, I'm not sure. We know that crypto itself is often very, very scammy. So, you know, we're gonna sell a bunch of these, whatever they are, meme coins, and then, you know, it'll bottom out and a few people make money, but not a lot of people. So, I mean, crypto is a whole problem with, you know, more, you know, scams fleecing the American people. But, whether or not, I'm sure they can, whether or not they would want to, given its fluctuating value and all of that, maybe a cryptocurrency scam is used to fund one of these things. Hard to say, because guess what? The money is dark. We don't know if it's coming from cryptocurrency. We don't know if it's coming from a cryptocurrency billionaire who has, you know, none of the interests of America or American people at heart. So because it's dark, yeah, they could take that money because we don't know where it comes from.
Are the totals
I'm sorry,
disposable?
wait, I'm sorry. No, I understand the impulse. I do. I completely do. Mr.
I
Ross,
think
anything
it's,
you want to
I
add?
think it's irrelevant.
Irrelevant? Okay. Mr. Wilcox, anything you want to add about cryptocurrency?
No,
No. Okay, you're an answer questions. Okay. Mr. Ross, this question goes to you next. Privatization of government services is a recipe for corruption. Can we stop it?
Well, I'm not sure I share that sentiment.
Okay.
You'd have to give me the specific case. I think you have to look at each of them one by one.
Okay. Mr. Wilcox?
I do think there's a potential for corruption in privatization of services, and we wrote a research report on for-profit charter schools in the state, and I think that report came out in like 2018. But we found a lot of issues about you know, charter schools that were not being held accountable for you know, student performance and attendance and that sort of thing. And so I do think there is a potential for corruption when we're privatizing what was a public sector enterprise.
Ms. Key?
Yeah, I definitely, so basically, when you've got this unlimited ability of corporations and billionaires to pour money into our politics, you are going to end up not just with the privatization of services, but with privatization of services that is not in the better interest of the people that are being served, right? I know that we have seen, certainly I'm sure a lot of us have heard about these schools of hope in Florida, which, and we don't work on education at Common Cause, but the schools of hope, which is been a problem in different parts of the state. And yes, the bills that passed that, those were advocated for by individuals who also donated enormous amounts of money to political campaigns. So it's not just the issue of privatizing, but it's who is privatizing and what advantages and what context do they have for that privatization. Have local municipalities been preempted out of home rule to decide if they want it privatized or not, right? So is it really the voice of the people? Do the people want it privatized, or did somebody contribute a lot of money to get an advantageous situation in which to privatize and under which regulations to have it privatized? And I think that's what you really want to look at, is who bought the influence to make that privatization possible and to make the context in which that privatization is regulated possible.
Mr. Ross, did you want to add?
No.
Okay.
I think that's everybody. Okay. Next, I don't want to leave anyone out. The next question is, what is the, I think this is, Mr. Wilcox, this comes to you first. What is the role of dark money after elections?
The problem with dark money is that you can't see it. In the research report that we wrote about the ghost candidates, there was a whole dark money scheme that put those. There were 3 Senate races in the state of Florida where, and we only learned this after the election, but it was essentially Florida Power and Light sent a bunch of money to a nonprofit, which then sent money to a political consulting firm in Alabama called Matrix. And then they placed money in 3 different Senate races in the state of Florida, including one in Miami-Dade. And that seat was held by Senator Javier Rodriguez. And the dark money was used, well, first of all, Florida Power and Light did not like Senator Javier Rodriguez because he had opposed them on some issues in the legislature where, Florida Power and Light, they are regulated by the State Public Service Commission, but the legislature controls who gets on the State Public Service Commission. So, Florida Power and Light has a really vested interest in making sure that they have, public service commissioners who are going to rule in their favor on rate cases. So, anyway, this political committee that was funded by the money that we were eventually able to trace back to Florida Power and Light, they ran a candidate in that Miami Senate race who had the same last name as the incumbent Senator Rodriguez. And then the candidate, the ghost candidate, never campaigned, never appeared at a debate or anything, but the political committee that was backing him ran mailers, promoting him as a, more like a progressive Democrat, and Senator, the incumbent Senator Rodriguez was also a Democrat, and that race was decided by like 32 votes, and the ghost candidate received 6,000 votes in that race, and Senator Rodriguez lost that seat to his Republican challenger, not to the ghost candidate, but to the Republican challenger. But so the ghost candidate basically siphoned votes away from the incumbent senator and cost him the election. So that seat was essentially stolen. And we were only, the press reported, was able to find the trail of money that went from Florida Power and Light through all these political committees and then eventually to the political committee that backed the ghost candidate. But they were only able to expose that because they were at the Alabama political consulting firm. Someone there leaked anonymously a bunch of ledgers and other documents to the press, and that's what dark money is you can't see it. You know? Only if you have a situation where there's a whistleblower, like there was in that case, you know, are you able to actually see what's taking place?
Ms. Keith?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we ever have after elections, do we? Because that's what I would ask, is that people are always raising for their next campaign or their next political move, right? And so those relationships with donors and with dark money is gonna keep moving. So, yeah, I guess, you know, once someone gets elected, we have to hold them accountable, but that doesn't mean that they don't continue to be susceptible to where they're gonna get the money for whatever their next campaign is, or whatever their next, you know, political move is. So, yeah, that would be, I'm gonna question the premise of the question, which is we don't really have after elections. This is all part of one cycle of how dark money is influencing the policies that get passed in our country. And I just want to give a shout out to the report that Ben was mentioning about the ghost candidates. Definitely go take a look at that, because that is fascinating to see just all the ways that you know, that we can see our elections be corrupted.
Mr. Ross?
I would say one thing you should take a look at if you're willing to spend the time. One of the things that we found is after the race is over, I mean, candidates that lose, right, those political committees kind of tend to go away. Watch what happens to the real sleazy, dirty ones after the election. A lot of times they close up and they'll open up a new one. That's what we found. They'll find another way to, another name, another way to do the stuff. But the big point is it's all coordinated. If you gotta take a look. When you see, just look at the Senate candidate fund, we went down 2 levels and there were 300 PACs involved. That's 2 levels. I bet you that there was over 1,000 PCs that in and out money, you'd never be able to figure out where the money came from. You know it came from that PAC, that piece political committee, but who's behind it? Unless you just want to spend 6 months digging through it, it has to stop. It has to stop.
The ghost candidate issue is a really interesting one. We had that in Brevard County, the last election in 2024. We had 2 ghost candidates in the primaries. Oh, I've got a microphone here. So it was a really interesting issue. This question goes to Ms. Keith first. Has the influence of social media increased or decreased the impact of money in elections, and how?
It's easy.
Yeah, that is easy. I don't know who just said that, but that is, yes. Obviously, there's huge problems with social media in elections, of course. I think we've certainly seen the platforms, so as part of the work that we do at Common Cause, we have, we do a lot of nonpartisan election protection work. And it used to be, back in 2020, when we would see things that were clearly dis or misinformation online, we could work with the platforms to get that taken down, right? Because it was manipulating the elections. That is hard to impossible now. I don't know if people saw this, but just this past week, there were multiple reports. We got one also called into the election protection hotline out in California about ChatGPT, just giving wrong election information. So we definitely see on social media where that policing of it, not policing or regulation of it to where we have dis and misinformation going around, it's not being changed. So yeah, you could put out an ad, like your dark money can put out those ads on social media, and then the platforms don't take them down. Platforms don't really have an incentive to do that at this point. We also have, issues with AI. We know that AI has gotten to the point where it looks incredibly realistic. I mean, I'm sure you have all seen this. It is extremely hard. There's a lot of work to try to get legislation passed to force disclosure of AI. Again, we get back to that issue of transparency that Ben mentioned right at the top. that this is a lot about disclosure, and our democracy works when our voters know what's happening, where the money's coming from, who produced something. So if something was produced by AI, we should have very, very strong disclosures. Now, will those, we've seen some AI disclosures pass. Often they're very weak to the point where they don't truly inform, or when they're required. So I think that I am sure that dark money will not be in favor of stronger disclosures on AI. That's a little bit of speculation on my part, to be fair, but just I'm going to take a logical leap. But I do think that the AI universe, the social media universe, has really impacted our elections. And I would just say that, since obviously this is a room of really involved people, please start inoculating folks now. When it comes to elections, we know people are going to write into ChatGPT. We know they're going to look on social media. It is so important for people to go to trusted sources. Please send them directly to the Supervisor of Elections webpage for election information. A lot of different organizations actually have their own pages for like, hey, get information here, but the more we can reinforce to send people to that Supervisor of Elections webpage, the less we will have people being misinformed about our elections. Help encourage people to really go to organizations that they trust to find out more, and just inoculate people against the inevitable mis and disinformation that is spreading on social media, because I think that in our current context, politically and definitely with respect to the way that campaigns are funded, I think getting the regulation we would need to really get this in control would be really hard.
Mr. Ross, social media?
Yeah, my suggestion would be a little different. I would say, don't believe anything you see on social media. Honestly, you should do your own homework, right? Go to candidate forums, ask the tough questions. I mean, Amy's right, a lot of the stuff is right up on this Supervisor of Elections website. If you see, you can also go in to the Secretary of State's website and get all the information on political committees. So I think we've all, as citizens, have gotten lazy. And that's really what's going to save our country, is when people start to wake up and take note and do their own research. It's so easy just to go, oh, wow, that makes sense. Just like the mailers, right? The mailers, one of the pieces of legislation that we're also trying to get passed, is those mailers were so deceiving, right? Because on the front, it implied, remember I told you DeSantis and Trump was on the front of it? Well, those guys didn't endorse any of those people, right? So the stuff that you even get in the mail, you gotta be careful. So we're proposing legislation, I kind of call it like clean up the advertising, where if you're gonna put someone's face other than your own on the advertising piece, the mailer or whatever, you have to have written permission to do so. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, that makes sense. So just when you get all the mail paraphernalia and look at it, look at the bottom, see where it's coming from. Then go, if it comes from a political committee, go to the Secretary of State's, see what it's all about. I think you'll learn a lot. You go through this a couple of times, you're going to be such a better voter. But do your own homework.
Mr. Wilcox, social media? Mr. Wilcox, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have any comment about the impact of social media on this issue?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Next question comes to Mr. Ross first. This is tough. What percentage of money in the elections in 2024 came from hard money, independent expenditures, and dark money? What was the proportions?
I don't have that answer,
Okay.
but I can give you some examples of specific cases in research. Remember the one I told you about, those mailers that were sent?
Yeah.
99 plus was all dark money, right? So you go into, I mentioned, give you an example. One of the PCs that supported that PAC, they had like 30 other PCs supporting it. So the amount of dark money is just beyond belief. The Senate the Senate one that I mentioned, it's just crazy. I mean, you wanna see it, just pick a PC. Pick a PC on your side of, your side of the football that is well known to you, and just go into the Secretary of State's office and look at where the money comes from. You can see it all there. The nice thing is with, you can't really download things unless you make a FOIA request. So what we did is we got good Xerox copies of the pages, and then we scanned them in. And the nice thing about AI, if you have a good copy, is they can still receive the information and sort it and do all the work for you. And it's amazing what you'll see. It'll make you sick. It'll make you sick. So I can't tell you what percentage, but I can tell you in the few that I looked, most of it is coming from corporations or we the money. So we don't have a chance. We got to fight.
Mr. Wilcox, do you want to address that percentage of money in the 2024 elections?
I don't really have the figures, but the title of this research report that I'm in the process of writing is going to be Dark Money, Florida's Opaque Campaign Finance System. So that's really where we are now. I mean, dark money is, again, it's hard to know how much money is there because you can't really see it. So, but I think it's well over the majority of the money that's moving in our campaign finance system now.
Ms. Key?
Yeah, and you can see me, I'm like trying to find this. So, okay, that I do not have the exact numbers either, obviously, but what I can tell you is a couple of places to look. And I literally had a graph of this up on my computer 2 days ago, going back through my history trying to find it. But go to Open Secrets. They do have a whole bunch of information there that you can look at, and that you can kind of dig around in their articles. I would definitely recommend that as a place where you can look into it. I think it's opensecrets.org. Yeah, it's opensecrets.org. That's a good place to look. And also another group that's been doing a lot of this, you heard both Ben and I quote them, is the Brennan Center for Justice. And so they also have quite a bit of work that they do to look at these percentages. So I can't give you the numbers, but like Alan said, it's really important for us all to be looking into this and informing ourselves. So those are two sources that you can go to, opensecrets.org and the Brennan Center for Justice.
Yeah, and Amy, you mentioned earlier the Campaign Legal Center. They do a lot of good work on that issue.
Very good, and you probably all have seen on your chairs, there should be a handout that we created, Want to Learn More About Dark Money, a short list of resources. I know I've already written a bunch of stuff on my copy. So thank you to Lori Alworth for putting that together, and we can keep adding to it. I wanted to give a shout out. Someone mentioned a couple people mentioned our Brevard Supervisor of Elections, that the website is votebrevard.gov. And it's an awesome resource. It doesn't just list candidates and tell you when elections are. There's a whole lot of just information and links to state websites, including the Secretary of State websites that have to do with voting in Florida. So there's a lot of really good information on there. I highly recommend it. The next question, I think it goes to Mr. Wilcox first. What is going on with dark money and SCOTUS nominees? And for those who don't know, SCOTUS is Supreme Court of the United States.
Well, I don't see the court, poised to overturn Citizens United anytime soon. Let's just say that. The court is really kind of responsible for putting us where we are today. So, I just don't see much hope for any kind of reversal of any of these decisions that have impacted the campaign finance landscape.
Ms. Keith?
Yeah, I think the answer to a lot of these questions is a very similar thing. It's about influence, right? And the fact that we don't know who's buying it, right? And that's the thing. Is that so when it comes to who's on the short list for a Supreme Court nomination, well, we don't know. Like, who gave money because that was the thing that they cared about, right? And what, and how they have used any influence that that money gave them, or, you know, how they have or haven't used that influence, right? So I think that's the thing, when it comes to, and I think the question was about Supreme Court nominations, we don't know, because that is what dark money does, is it means we do not know who is supporting and influencing our elected officials. And that is an answer to a lot of the questions here today, is that that's the problem with dark money, is that we don't know. I will also say that there's an interesting thing when it comes to money in the Supreme Court, which is that they police themselves on their ethics regulations, right? So that is a little bit of a different issue, but definitely worth doing a little bit of a dive into as well. Because the Supreme Court has a little bit different rules that function for them about what, you know, and how they can interact with, you know, with wealth. So, but yeah, I think in a nutshell, because it's dark, we don't know truly how it is or isn't influencing who is nominated to the Supreme Court.
The only other thing I'd like to say, I think the money is a chameleon myself. So I think when power shifts, a lot of times the money shifts. So if you watched Trump's inauguration and you saw the cast of characters behind him, those are the same cast of characters that were behind the left before. So the money moves, right? They're doing what's best for what they want to accomplish. That's why we have to organize and do better so that we get elected representatives that represent us and do what we want.
Very good. I think that was all three. So Ms. Keith, I think we're back to you. Is Florida's treatment of dark money worse than other states?
I do not know the answer to that because I work in Florida. So I cannot answer that, but I would be happy to connect folks and get some information from my fellow executive directors in other states.
Common Cause is national, right?
Common Cause is a national organization. We are present in 23 states across the country. We work on campaign finance in all 23 states. So I'd be happy to direct folks, but you can go to our website and look up what is happening in those other states. But I'm sorry I don't have that comparative answer for you.
Mr. Ross, do you have any info?
I know that quite a few of them still allow PC transfers. Some states don't, but I don't have the numbers because I've worked with people around the country on this, and each state's a little different. But in our state, we do, so it's a mess.
Mr. Wilcox, do you have anything to
I
add?
mean, it's a national problem at the federal level, it's a state problem at the state level, and it's a local problem, as Alan has talked about, as far as the local elections and these pacts that are being formed. I think this is going on at some level in all the states, in the country. I mean, it's just the way people who want to manipulate elections, it's the way they're doing.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next, I think, Mr. Ross, we're first with you. This is a proposal. That's a proposed solution. I love it. What do you think if each candidate is allowed to receive a certain amount of money and then everyone must use only that money to run their candidacy? Level the playing field?
I like it, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's why, I mean, even if we get the transfers taken care of, which I do believe there's some hope on that, I think you have to deal with the amount of money that's being spent. Because, like I said, with the mailers that came in here, none of that money came from Brevard County. It was just boom. Little local races, state committee men and women. I mean, you just can't even imagine that. I mean, I felt so bad for so many grassroots candidates. They're sitting in there, they worked maybe 2 years, they've been out knocking on doors, and then 2 weeks before the primaries, people's mailboxes just highly targeted, highly motivated, and then you look at what we found, what was behind it. It was all orchestrated. And it was orchestrated because they want pro-growth, I love living in Brevard County. I moved here 8 years ago. I don't want this place destroyed. That's why I'm fighting this. It's crazy.
Mr. Wilcox, what do you think of that?
Well, I just don't think, that's ever gonna be a feasible kind of solution because, we just have so much case law, about people's right to have speech. And as long as there's somebody out there that has money that they can spend to manipulate an election, that money's gonna find its way in there somehow. And I just think we have to, do things like prohibiting the transfers between political committees and other steps to make the whole campaign finance system transparent, like it was originally meant to be.
Okay, Ms. Keith?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question was like about limiting how much a candidate can spend, right?
Yes.
So I mean, I think that gets at that difference between hard money and independent expenditures, which comes at the heart of the Citizens United problem, right? That we could limit how much a candidate can spend, but under Citizens United, we can't limit how much somebody else wants to voice their opinion about that candidate. That's the problem, and how much money can be spent to do that. So it would be very complicated. I mean, I think it's interesting. So one of the reasons that public campaign financing, which I talked about a bit, is effective is that it does put on a lot of money on the table for the candidate, and then if they accept that money, they usually do have to accept some sort of spending limit, right? And that's actually helpful, and that can actually help level the playing field from the hard money side. But it's not gonna, we still have the problem of those quote-unquote independent expenditures. And so when you hear Alan talking a lot about how they aren't really independent, then that really gets at, making sure that we are enforcing independence. That's some of what Common Cause has sued on in the past, strengthening the regulations on independence, preventing, the transfers back and forth, and that transparency. I mean, under the current regime, or the current, rubric of, the Supreme Court rulings, yeah, that's where we are. So you could prevent the candidate from spending, but you can't prevent other people from spending that money. So yeah, this is really looking at independence and transparency. I think are probably our best pathways.
Okay. Next question goes to Mr. Wilcox first. Can candidates coordinate with PACs, and has that recently changed?
In Florida, they can now coordinate. Not only coordinate with PACs, they can just go ahead and set up one political committee and raise and spend unlimited amounts of money. That's why, in this research report that's going to come out, we're going to recommend taking the limits off of what a candidate can raise directly into their candidate account. Because it just makes no sense to put limits on what a candidate raises directly into their account, but then allow them to set up a political committee where they're not subject to any limits. As far as transparency, that just makes no sense. Like I said earlier, it's an illusion of regulation. It's not real regulation.
I just to illustrate that. So say you've got from a corruption standpoint in Florida, we have a statute that you can't give a gift to an elected official, right? But you give a gift to their PAC. So I mean, it really does make a bit of a mockery of those types of regulations when you have the situation that Ben was describing.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I agree with all of that.
Okay. Next question, this is kind of a wrap-up question, so, and I don't know if I'll offer each of the panelists an opportunity for some quick last words after this question. May we have some quick talking points for talking to others to ask them to sign to remove the dark money and give back our voices?
Can I start?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think it's your
Okay.
turn.
Best way you can do it, sign this today. Pass it out, give it to your friends. Have them go to my website, I outlined exactly what we've been talking about here. Never go to an election that's important to you without looking at the money and seeing where the money comes from. The sad part about the whole story is that even if you do that, you're still probably gonna have a problem. Like in my example, that didn't happen. Those mailers came in late in the campaign. The horse was let out of the barn. You couldn't have done anything at that point to stop it. The only thing that could have been done is file a legal suit. But most grassroots candidates don't have the money, can't build the support to do it. But I think they would have had a good case. I think they would have had a good case. What we actually tried to do was organize her grassroots candidates in all 7 of those counties. But by the time we got to organizing it, they had just kind of lost their passion for it and said, you know something, we don't want names involved, but do your homework. That's all I can suggest you can do. That's how you make a difference.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox? Talking points?
Well, I just think we need to, work across party lines and try to come together, united behind a push for transparency in the financing of our campaigns. I'm encouraged to hear what both Amy and Alan are doing with your respective organizations, and I know Amy is still Amy is lobbying the legislature on behalf of the common cause. And maybe if Alan can get one of his local representatives to file a bill, Amy would be able to help with getting that bill at least heard in a committee, and maybe even move through the process.
We're actually doing that. We went before the county commission here in Brevard about this issue and informed them. In our legislation days before the legislative session, which was held about a month ago, we made presentations. I didn't do it, but people who work with me made presentations to the legislature saying that this is what the citizens support. But, one person getting up in front and 3 or 4 or 5 people at an event like that or at a commission doesn't make it. You just have to continue to pound them left and right, over and over. That's why I've said if you believe in this, share it on social media, talk about it has to stop. The big money has to stop going from PC to PC. We need to work on this together, and let's work together to fix this.
Yeah, I think the simplest talking point that folks, if you want to talk to other people and explain what the issue is here, for all of these different solutions that we're hearing proposed that help chip away at this problem and help resolve it, it is really about, we need to stop billionaire and corporate control of our government. I mean, I think you heard Alan say, there's we the people and there's we the money. We know that most Americans and most Floridians are with all of us on that it should be we the people. Our elected officials should be listening to us. We know that most Americans think that money in politics is an enormous problem, which is resulting in us not having the representation and the governance that we deserve as Americans and as Floridians. So I do think that the talking point, which I think is most simple and easy to remember, is that whether it's about stopping the pack-to-pack transfers or if it's about greater transparency, we need to stop billionaire and corporate control of our government. This is about us. This is about accountability to we the people. So that is, if you can remember that talking point, it's going to apply to most of these solutions that you've heard up here today.
My 2 cents is that this is a fairness issue. I think the League of Women Voters, when we do take positions on issues, it's with regard to fairness, and seems to me that's what we're talking about here today. I want to thank our panelists and the audience for being great and asking great questions. Can we have some applause for that? And I guess I send all of you to our website, lwv-spacecoast.org, for more information about other events that we're putting together. Preemption was mentioned a few times. That's like one of my pet issues. I'm trying to put something together, so if anyone's interested in that issue, come talk to me because I need help with that. Susan, you want to take
And we're still keeping our committee active on dark money because we know this is a huge issue and that we have other aspects of it that have not even been mentioned today yet. But I think from what you heard from all three of our speakers, this is a problem that has been building for a long, long time. So even if we get one little thing passed in the legislature, we're still going to have to, like Alan said, pound, pound, pound. You have to keep in touch with your legislators, and let them know where you stand. You know, Thanksgiving table conversation.
Not every day.
We do have a gift for each one of our speakers today. For your coffee table. There you go. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.
And I'm wondering who's
There we go, and we're gonna mail yours to you.
Well, Ben, do
Ben.
you want me to bring yours to you next time I'm up in Tally?
Sure.
Oh, okay, if you don't mind.
You have a cart to carry in there, it's really heavy. I mean,
It is heavy, I wouldn't want, you know, we gotta, it takes a village and we need all the pennies we can get, so you don't need to spend money to
I would just say, you know, all of our research reports are on our website, and you can also contact me through the website, so, please reach out.
Thank you very much. Can I have another round of applause? And take a last snack as you're going out the door, okay? Yes.
Just before we leave, I just wanted to introduce Francesca is our organizer. She lives here in Brevard. She's a Comcast advisor. You go see her at the table at the back. You can also go to comcast.org/Florida to get involved with our work. Legislative session is coming. The elections next year are already starting, so please keep in touch.
Okay, the last thing I'd like to do, if anybody felt like signing these forms, I'd be glad to take them. And if anybody wants to ask me any other questions, I'll hang around for a while. Thanks.
Finally, there's more food and drinks here.